an honor and pleasure to speak with you, Cody, too. I cannot see you, but maybe you can see us with Ole Dammegardem and me.
No, Cody is on a landline.
Okay.
So
it's not Skype, yeah, it's a phone call. And it must be very early in the morning for you, or how? What time?
Yes, it is early in the morning, but it's a wonderful opportunity, and I'm really glad I can feel a good spiritual vibration here, and it's really good that we're all together now.
Yeah, I feel it too. And I believe many have not seen you but heard you on YouTube. You are a Black Ops contractor, former, isn't it so? And then you have written a book, Choosing the Light, later when you stopped working with the Black Ops. Is it something like 94, 95?
Yes, I retired in March of 1995.
Okay, and as I heard that you have been offered the job of Oklahoma City bombing, and maybe that it's this specific thing that made you to stop. Is it so, or do you understand that you have been offered the job with false flag of Oklahoma City bombing, which was 95? It was in April 95, isn't it?
Yes, that Oklahoma City here in the United States, the Alfred P. Murrah building was blown up and detonated on April 19th of 1995. And I was offered the job to do that in October of 1994, about 6 months or so before it actually happened.
Yeah, and what specifically would you do? They ask you to do?
They asked me to blow up the building and destroy the building. And the reasons why had to do with the Iraq War and the cover-up in the Pentagon and the U.S. Department of Defense concerning depleted uranium weapons and the records, the medical records for Gulf War syndrome sickness. And that was the two main reasons. There was also political records that had been stored there that were law enforcement records that were about Bill and Hillary Clinton and some of their criminal activities in Arkansas, the state of Arkansas here in the United States back in the mid-1980s. So there was a variety of reasons why they wanted the building destroyed and the records destroyed.
Cody, can I ask you, were you given any reason why did this CIA operative that contacted you, did he give any kind of explanation why they wanted that building bombed, or you were just informed that they wanted the job done? Do you want it?
Absolutely not. When you're involved in black operations, they're highly compartmentalized, and I was just offered the job, and with no explanation of why or anything to do with the records or anything. I discovered all those things later on, but at the time of the job offer in October of 1994, standard procedure is to have a minimum amount of information. It's called need to know, and you only are told what you need to know to get the job done. That way, if you're caught or captured or tortured, you can't give up any information except the little bit that you know.
Mm. And you said that there were something they wanted to take out documentation or evidence of other crimes. It reminds me a little bit of World Trade Center Tower 7, that there was some evidence that they wanted to destroy at the same time. Is it correct that I'm...
Yes, yes. And Ole can also talk about the Pentagon when it was hit on September 11th, 2001. The section of the Pentagon that was hit had a bunch of financial records that was in it. And our Secretary of Defense at the time, Donald Rumsfeld, had spoken in front of Congress and said there were trillions of dollars of missing money. And then when the 9/11 attack came, that section of the Pentagon that was hit was dealing with that very same record scenario about the missing money.
Yeah, and what I have heard that there was some restoring or some work on restoration, so-called restoration of specifically the part of the building, some renovation just before the false flag operation. And
yes,
also, and I would just say that in the Pentagon we can see that the explosion goes from inside out and not from outside in, and no plane debris was found. And then there was April Gallup, I believe, who worked in Pentagon, and she had the feeling that as soon as she pushed a button on her computer, the building blow out. So she had the feeling that she has not she has caused, but her computer was set to explode the building. So
no, I think that was just a coincidence. The whole operation is so much bigger than that, and they couldn't rely on her just randomly hit a key on her computer. But Barbara Honegger has made an absolute incredible exposure of what actually went down around the Pentagon building, which is very, very different to the official story.
Yeah. But if I go back to the Oklahoma City bombing, you rejected it, the job.
Yes. At the time, that was October of 1994. And like I said earlier, I retired in March of 1995. So I was at the end of my operational effectiveness. I had been severely injured, had numerous broken bones, fractured vertebrae, nerve damage, and so forth during the course of operations. And I had actually died twice in the hospital. So I had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. My doctor said that I had a severe case of it, and I had been drinking alcohol to treat myself for the PTSD. And I was drinking pretty heavily, and I was at the end of my career, and I was on my way out. And that's one reason I think they offered me that job was, number one, they needed a patsy, and then it would also shut me up from the things that I knew.
Yeah.
So it was a double reason why I was offered that job. And then I turned that job down on patriotic grounds because I didn't mind going overseas and doing jobs, but I did not want to, hurt our American people. And that's the point at which I turned from an asset into a liability.
Yeah. And how much money have they offered for the job?
They offered me $1 million in U.S. currency.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah, from one viewpoint it is. but from another viewpoint, it's a little, just a tiny bit of money, because when you think about doing things like that, you know, you're going to have to leave your country, and you're going to have a series of false identities and so forth, and it's the overhead and expenses of such things. You know, it's really hard in the Black Ops world. Bombings are common. They're a common way to affect any type of economic or political change, but the aftermath of it for the people and the bombers that do it, you have to really be careful so that you're not assassinated or arrested later on.
But Cody, what would have been a normal sum that would fit the job for the Oklahoma City one?
Well, I wouldn't take any less than $10 million if I was going to do a job like that. But that's just me. And there's other people, you know, Timothy McVeigh, I don't know what kind of deal he had or what he made. You know, some people will take jobs on idealistic or religious grounds, and they don't even do it for money, like some of the terrorists that bombed the embassy or U.S. embassy in Beirut that killed hundreds of United States Marines. Some people are religiously motivated. Other people's are idealistically motivated, but we worked for money. We were contractors that worked for money.
Mm. And you have started already in the 70s, or when have you started?
Yeah, in the mid 1970s. In 1975, the CIA recruiter came to recruit me out of the physics department in the university here in America. And at that time, I turned down recruitment for the CIA.
Yeah. And the Oklahoma City that you have been offered, is it from CIA or was it private?
Well, the guy that offered it to me, I can say his name now because I do not want to violate the IIPA. That's the Intelligence Identities Protection Act. It was passed here in America, where it's illegal to name CIA operatives if they're operational. But this person's deceased now, so I can say his name. It's Harold Leonard, and that's the guy that offered it to me. And he was also a contractor. He had told me that he worked for CIA. He'd done several jobs overseas for them. So the reason they went through the Black Ops community was so that no CIA agent or asset could be tied to anything like this, and there would be no blowback later on.
Mm.
Do you know of any other people that were offered this job?
No. Like I said, these type of jobs, especially domestic bombing operations, you have to, you know, there's a high degree of compartmentalization in the information and knowledge in case anyone, you know, gets prosecuted later on and wants to cut a deal with the prosecutors. They have no information to give them.
Cody, is money, cash money, a normal way of being paid? Or I know in other operations and assassinations that some of the shooters have been paid in heroin or silver or things like that. But what is your experience?
Yeah, well, like in Africa, we got paid in South African Cougarans. In Sierra Leone and West Ivory Coast, Africa, some payments were made in diamonds. Oftentimes we would be given arms, like crates of Russian AK-47 machine guns or explosives. In Colombia and Central America, sometimes we got paid in cocaine. So, and then there's a variety of currencies. But the problem you have if you're overseas, you know, and you come back, how are you going to bring those kind of things back into the United States? You know, so we had to convert those type of payments into more liquid forms of assets, generally paper currency or diamonds, and then we bring them back into the country. But when you're doing black ops, you cannot leave a financial trail, and you can't use the banks in a standard way. And sometimes if you have transfers of money, then you have to hide that money, and you have to conceal its source, which means you have to have a series of cutouts in the banks or front companies like the Cayman Islands or something like that. And then you can wash the money, the black ops money, and then get it back into the United States in the form of an investment or real estate or whatever you're going to do.
In Waco, it was 93, wasn't it? 1993. Was you involved? Were you involved in Waco somehow also?
No, that Waco happened February 28th of 1993, and I was not there, and I was not involved. But one of my friends that I knew, named Ron Cole, he was a branch Davidian, and he was there, and he told me things that he saw that are very, very different from the government's story about it.
Can you?
And we have that, his story in the book, Choosing the Light, Dark Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing.
Okay, on YouTube, what you can see, there's a video that the shooters from outside FBI and so that actually it was them who came in the building and shooting. So you understand that it was a false flag.
Yeah, what the government's official story was, and what's actually happened according to several eyewitnesses, are very, very different. It's the similar pattern to Oklahoma City bombing and 9/11. You know, the Sheffield bombing in England and the Bali bombing. Ole knows a lot about that back in, I think, 2002 it was. But these all have a certain pattern to them. And that's what we're trying to expose, is the patterns that the shadow governments and New World Order planners, these patterns are using, you know, to manipulate public opinion in PSYOPs and then gradually change each country, you know, covertly from the inside out.
Yeah. So if we go back in 1974 or middle of 17th, you are in university, and as I understand it, you have a degree in, is it mathematics and physics? Or
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees in physics and in mathematics, both.
yeah, and then directly you started to work with this, and I have heard that you have worked for an oil company, but was it totally a cover, or have you worked for the oil company a little bit?
Yes, after I graduated with a double Bachelor of Science degree in math and physics, then I went on to work on my Master of Science degree in physics, and after that went to Chevron Oil Company and Amoco Oil Company here in the United States as a petroleum geophysicist, and that was a civilian front for the black ops that we were doing.
Yeah, and if you describe the jobs you got in the beginning, the first years, what kind of jobs in Black Ops you've got?
Well, we were moving drugs and arms, and my job when I first started out was basically just, you know, driving trucks and stuff and moving things, and also guarding safe houses. Oftentimes, there were large quantities of both drugs or arms that were coming up from South America, and we were involved in Nicaragua. But they had to have safe houses. Some of these weapons were stolen from the armories the United States National Guard armories, and they had to have cool-off periods where they would be hidden, you know, during investigations that popped up. And so sometimes I guarded those locations. Sometimes we bodyguarded individuals who were moving the arms or the drugs, and they wanted to be bodyguarded while they were doing their operations. So we did a wide variety of things.
In
like
the
that.
beginning, was it jobs in the United States often, or is it all over the world from beginning?
No, from the beginning, it was mostly stuff here domestically in the States. And then later on, we went overseas.
Yeah, and then later on, what kind of job you did? Was it even assassinations or terrorism outside of the United States?
Well, I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
Oh.
So we did do black ops jobs overseas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Is it usual that the CIA and these dark forces recruit people and universities?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I could not understand the question.
If it's usual that they recruit university students, is it usual for?
Oh, yes, it's absolutely. It's very, very usual. The CIA monitors high schools. They monitor the colleges. And in my case, in 1974, here in America, when you graduate high school, they call it, and you're going into university, they give a test. It's called the SAT test, Scholastic Aptitude Test, and it tests your knowledge to make sure you have certain requirements to go into the university. And when I took my test in physics, I scored in the top 1% in the whole United States. And that is why the CIA came to recruit me.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you a question, Cody? You said you were taking care of safe houses and so on. Could you describe what would be essential for a safe house? How would you describe a normal type of safe house for these operations?
Yeah, a normal safe house. First of all, you have to make sure that there's no electronic tracking devices on the vehicles or in the equipment. You know, if you're moving, say, cases of Russian AK-47 machine guns, you got to make sure there's no bugs in there. So we would always sweep whatever was going into the safe houses electronically to make sure there was no radio frequencies being emitted so they couldn't be tracked. And then we had a series of things where you change vehicles and use civilian vehicles, you know, vans, trucks, all registered to false names, you know, with false license plates. And then once the ordnance or the material was placed in the safe house, then it was a normal type of safe house. Sometimes we had civilian fronts. There were families with kids living in the safe house. Sometimes they knew about the operation. Other times they were just cover families that they were not aware of what was in the house. So we had a wide variety of ways of keeping the information compartmentalized. And you know, the houses would be, or sometimes it was out in raw land, just creek beds or fields, and the stuff was buried. And then we'd park a vehicle over it so that it couldn't be detected from the air. And that's just the way you have a safe house. It's a place where you can store things and keep things until a time is right when they're needed.
But can that be apartments and townhouses, villas, farms?
Yeah, it can be anything. We use anything, even banks. You can use anything that's a civilian cover. A company, you know, anything that is a civilian normal operation, we use those for covers.
Are there any, like you, former operative, would you be able to spot a safe house you know, is there anything to look out for? Or...
Well, from a trained eye, yeah. I've done it for so long and seen so many different safe houses. You know, you're trained not to believe anything on the surface. You know, you don't believe anything you see or hear, and you just observe things. You know, the CIA is real good around the world at looking at terrorist safe houses for Hezbollah and you know, various terrorist groups, and they observe the patterns and can tell, oftentimes coupled with satellite intelligence, you know, that it is a safe house and there's something else going on. But a lot of times they will leave the safe houses in place so that they can observe the people that are coming and going, and then expand the network and track down even more terrorists.
And how is it when you work and your family? How much can you say to them, or how did it work with you were married? I understand, and how could it influence the relationship?
Well, the number one thing you have to do when you're doing black ops is the people that are closest to you are the ones you trust the least. And that's an operational requirement to stay alive. Because when we were gone, especially overseas, we had other team members or black operators that would watch our families without their knowledge, to make sure they were not kidnapped or tortured or used against us. And so I could never allow my wife to know what we were doing. That's an absolute no-no in black ops.
Mm-hmm. And
so it's real hard. It's real hard on relationships, and it requires lying and deception to make it work. But then the payoff at the end of it is that everyone stays alive.
Yeah.
And nobody gets tortured.
Yeah.
Nobody gets their fingers cut off, or you know, chemically interrogated or shocked. You know, it's difficult for civilians in the civilian world, people who have not been in the military, to understand, you know, this black ops thing, because there's reasons why they do things operationally, like compartmentalizing information. It's to protect people in the long run and protect the principals who are hiring out the operation in case there's some major blowback. And whatever country you work in, your job is to minimize the blowback and keep things quiet. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes things happen that are out of your control. And so all of these procedures for black ops are set up to help protect not only the operatives, but the people who are hiring them out.
Yeah. And now the wife you have or had during the time you have worked with this, now she knows because you have written the book.
Well, my wife years ago, of 31 years, had a massive coronary heart attack, and so she's gone now.
Oh.
So that's one reason I came out with the books.
Okay, so sorry to hear that. And I don't know if you have children. It must be difficult to have children in such a situation.
It's extremely difficult. It's very difficult. And, you know, I could say a lot of things. There's a lot of other operations we were involved in besides Oklahoma City, but I will not talk about those. I cannot talk about those, not at this point.
Yeah.
You know, they say I'm a whistleblower. I am to a small degree, but there's other things, and there's other names that I know, but I cannot say those names because they have families and they have children and grandchildren.
Yeah. And
when you do operations, sometimes things can come back to haunt you 10 or 20 years later. And you have to be very careful what you do. first of all, you have to stay alive. And then later on, you have to be careful what you say and how you say it and when you say it, because timing is everything when you're being a whistleblower.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how it is to be threatened by these people. So
have they threatened you too?
Yeah, how it started with me, I knew nothing about New World Order and Illuminati on 27th of February 2013. And the next day, the British spies tried to kill me because I had sent an article to Czech television. And the article name is Spooks Haywood and Williams linked. It's, if you know Gareth Williams, it was a spy, or he worked for intelligence in Britain, and he was found in a suitcase at home, and their explanation, the Secret Service explanation, was that he got into the bag just to check if he can get out, and he couldn't get out. So he died that way in his bath tube. In it was not September, it was August. Heat on is in his department, and he decomposed very quickly, of course, in the bath tube. So, and Haywood, it was a who probably wanted to do a coup d'etat in China, and the Chinese has found out, I guess, and they killed him. So,
yeah.
So about this article, I have sent to Czech television because of something completely else, and to this article is linked American Secret Service man whose name is Trowbridge Ford. I don't know if you know him. And it was about MI5, MI6, that the former chief of MI5, Jonathan Evans, is a specialist on doing terrorist attacks, and the chief of MI6 by that time, 2013, is a specialist on overthrowing of a foreign government. And this, the Secret Service went after me and tried to kill me. First the British, then like within 2 weeks or middle of March, suddenly I have got attacks because I continued. So I've got attacks from somebody else. It was really attacks like they went into my Gmail and stopped it while I was writing an email, or I was walking in Czech Republic from one coffee shop to the other, tried to send a message about a conflict that they have tried to provoke in Korea, between South Korea and North Korea, and I tried to like stop this conflict. And it was somebody who followed me and blocked the message that I have tried to send from both the coffee shop, different ways. So I knew that somebody was following me on the surveillance, and stop it very effectively, much more effectively than the British who has done DDoS attacks on the computer only. But this other attacks was much more powerful. And then in the middle of May 2018, the head of Illuminati has sent a message. Well, we have a 5 years anniversary now today. So I knew that in the middle of March 2013, the head of Illuminati learned about me, little me here, who has known nothing about New World Order 3 weeks before, or about shadow government or anything. So it was like crazy these years. I don't know if you can understand me, but they have tried to blackmail me, for example, that they will kill my aunt in Chicago, or they have blackmailed me that they will kill my cousins' children or grandchildren. So I know these and threats against me. And now I told Ole Dammegardem that I have got threats more than 2 months ago that they will kill the youngest son of Fritz Springmeier, if you know who it is. Fritz Springmeier, bloodlines.
I know Fritz Springmeier very well,
you know?
and yeah, I wrote him letters in prison when they planted him with evidence over here in the United States, and they put him in this Sheridan FCI. That's a federal correctional institution, and we wrote letters back and forth. So I know Frisco and his girl Cisco and all them very well. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, please.
But it would be great because since 12th of July, I don't have any contact with Fritz Springmeier, and he would be part of this conference, and I don't know what's with him, if he is safe or if he has got threatened, if he has got the same threats as I, that they will kill his youngest son. And I have directly written to Ole, and if you know Sandra Fecht, about that they are threatening to kill his child, but I didn't dare to write to him. I thought that it's too much. I will not write to Fritz about it. But after that, he vanished from me. We would have much of contact now. So in case you learn anything about what is happening to him, he should be in Kansas, living in the house of his sister. So
okay.
I would be.
Well, one thing I just want to say is when they're trying to shut you up, like they are a lot of us. They do not want the truth to come out, the New World Order people, and how they control intelligence agencies in various countries like MI6 and around the world. But sometimes you can get a little bit out, like you did, and then back off and be quiet for a while and let some time go by, and then they start focusing on other people, because there's a lot of people like Ole that are trying to get the truth out, and there's a big truth movement around the world, and so they can turn their sights on other people, and you can lay low and move around a little bit and then pop back up. In Indian, we call that the mole medicine. You know how a mole goes underground for a while and he's safe, and then at some other point the mole pops out of a different hole, and so that's a one way to kind of defeat this New World Order assassination and violence thing. A lot of targeted individuals here in the United States, they have to move around, and once your emails get hit and they hack your computer and stuff, a lot of people just quit and they move around, or they write in pen names or use some other name, to get the information out. The important thing is to get the information out.
Yeah, and
you have to stay alive to do that.
yeah, and I feel more safe here. I would live in Sweden, and I would be dead in Sweden. It's almost the same as Ole. Ole left also Sweden because of, and maybe the story.
Well, I have a friend in Norway and another one in Tel Aviv, Israel, but I was just made aware that there was a missing WikiLeaks assistant named Campus, if I'm saying his name right, Kimphuis, and he was found in Norway. His belongings was found in Norway, but he's disappeared for a little over 2 weeks now, and his belongings were found near the sea somewhere by a body of water or something. And I just emailed my friend over there to see what he knew about it. But there are people being murdered and people being disappeared and people being threatened. It's really increased here in America just in the last 2 weeks. I've been getting calls and emails from dozens and dozens of people. They've been hit with microwave weapons. They've been threatened. Their computers have been shut down. Their bank accounts have been shut down, and so forth. So there's a major push worldwide right now by the New World Order to silence the truth and silence dissent.
Yeah, and if you see, they shut down they take down our videos. For example, the lecture that Ole gave in Prague here, 2017, they removed it from my English YouTube channel, and also our interview where Ole talks about crisis actors and crowds on demand, fake news. They removed it also, but the head of Illuminati and the Illuminati have a YouTube channel, Lie Killers. There they, for example, there is a video which is 4 years old. They are threatening many YouTubers, specific name, and the first is Alex Jones. We will torture you, we will kill you, and it's on YouTube. And threatening with nuclear attacks, it's still on YouTube. It's ridiculous.
Yes, it is ridiculous, but they control, Google, Yahoo, Facebook. They control, like they do in China. The Chinese government wouldn't let Google come in there unless they use their AI, artificial intelligence algorithms, to do the bidding of the Chinese government. And that is controlling information at the source and controlling dissent. And so this is a mind control war. It's a war of strategic deception and psyops, or psychological operations. It's being implemented through these companies like Google and the New World Order. And people like Mark Zuckerberg here, the American that founded Facebook, he would never have been allowed to get as big as he did unless the intelligence agencies, had back doors and had a method of covert control. Same thing with Bill Gates.
Yes.
A lot of the Microsoft software packages that are sold, they all have back doors built in them, so CIA and NSA here in the United States can access the data covertly without the knowledge of the users.
Yeah, it's awful. Have you also heard about a nano domestic girl that it's a former nun, Carrie Burner, that was speaking about it, and I have heard about it in October 2013, and what I've heard was that they have developed a nanoprocessor that they let us drink in municipal water, like in your country, or in Pepsi beverages, Nestle, Coca-Cola, and then it's inside of you doing nothing. But when they want to get rid of you, they do it this way, that they activate it via cell phone tower or drone, and when it's activated, you get influenza-like symptoms, and then within like 10-12 days you are dead, and that more than like 98% of people really die. Have you heard about this nano-domestic girl developed by DARPA?
Yes, I have heard of it, although I have not seen it operationally. Back when I was working in Black Ops, I did see, vials that, were clear, they were poison, and, the people that were using them were told to coat the inside of a drinking glass, and it would dry perfectly clear, tasteless, and odorless. And it had a pretty long shelf life. And then whenever someone put a fluid into the container, the poison would activate, and then when the person drank it, death would come in about a minute or so. of what appeared to be natural causes, like a stroke or a heart attack, and they were protein synthesized poisons. They were poisons that would defeat the standard forensic pathology, where they use gas chromatography mass spectrometers. That's the GC mass MC machines. These things take tissue samples and they vaporize them, and they do a spectral analysis and then a gravimetric analysis on them to determine what poisons, like the old poisons like arsenic or cyanide, they will show up. Even radiological poisons like polonium. You guys may recall that KGB agent that just died in Moscow here in the last year or two. He was poisoned with polonium. That stuff all shows up. But the newer poisons, you can't, there's no residue left in the tissue. Now, the stuff you're talking about are like electrochemicals. It's a poison that sits dormant in the body, and it's activated by a certain frequency of electromagnetic radiation, like microwaves. I've heard about that from DARPA and from CIA, but I have never seen it. I've seen the other kind of poisons, and I know they're real, but I've not seen what you're talking about.
Yeah, this polonium poisoning, I believe maybe you were talking about Aleksandr Litvinenko that was poisoned in London. And
yes.
I wanted to ask you, I wouldn't believe that any Russian has killed him, but the British has the reason to kill him. So, and there were also, but you don't know anything about it, maybe?
No, I don't know anything about that except what I saw on the civilian news, which I've learned not to believe. But he could have been a double agent, and he could have been murdered by MI6 or poisoned by MI6. Look like the Russians did it, or the Russians could have did it to make it look like MI6 did it. If he was a double agent, it's very hard to know what actually happened.
Yeah, there was actually a restaurant that where he has been with some Italian guy, and the personal staff has got rashes probably of the same poison. So it was like more. I believe it was the British, but okay, it looked like that. I wanted to ask you also about the Illuminati or New World Order. They are satanic, and have you seen anything like child satanic ritual abuse, or that you believe that it's involved somehow?
I have not seen any of that myself because that's against my morals. If I see children being abused or raped or anything, I resort to violence immediately. I don't talk. I stop it. And so I have heard of it. We were not involved in child trafficking or anything like that, although I did meet several people overseas that were prostitutes, both male and female, for this pedophile network thing. But I was not involved in that. We basically, moved arms and drugs, and we did a lot of bodyguard work and guarding of safe houses and so forth. And I tried, very hard to stay out of assassination activities. So, there's a lot of things that I will not talk about, though. I just can't at this point.
Yeah, I understand, but we have heard, like through the usual people who don't work with Black Ops, that the money laundering from these drug, that it's the biggest banks that it's doing the money laundering.
Yeah, one of my girlfriends years ago, she was in Miami working, and she had dinner with Pablo Escobar, and you know, from Colombia, and we were involved in a lot of that stuff down there too. A lot of the money, you know, from those operations in South America and Nicaragua, you know, they were laundered in banks, some of them here in America. And one of the big bank hubs back then was the BCCI Bank. That's the Bank of Commerce and Credit International in the Cayman Islands. And I knew some guys that were vice president of the banks and so forth that helped. You know, they used their civilian front as being a banker. And of course, the whole time they were working in black ops. And the pay was very good. You know, they got their normal pay from the bank, but then they made a whole lot more money washing money and zeroing out accounts and forging documents, and you know how it all goes.
Mm-hmm. And when they pick like you and people, it's obvious that you must be quite intelligent, but is it some kind of personality testing that you can stand to work with it, or do you think they have checked your personality that you will be able to do this in 20 years?
Yes. Standard procedure, like here in the United States, for the CIA, if you accept recruitment for them, they send you to a place called the Farm around Langley, Virginia. But before that, you know, they do a whole battery of psychological tests, and they try to, you know, determine your psychological makeup, whether you can sustain black ops and so forth. And that was there was a program in the 80s, 84 and 85 that was begun here called Project Slammer, which dealt with psychological testing because, you know, it was a 10-year study. The NSA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Navy, and Air Force intelligence were all involved with the CIA and the Behavioral Science Unit of the FBI. And they were tasked with developing, you know, psychological profile tests because we had a number of high-level defections. One example was Aldrich Ames, who was our CIA station chief in Moscow, and he was turned by the KGB in Moscow, unbeknownst to the CIA. And then when he got back to Langley here in the United States to finish out his 20-year career, he was actually stealing secrets and selling them to the Russians. And he was caught, and he's doing life in prison without parole now at the Florence Supermax Correctional Facility here in Colorado, where I am now. And then another guy was Robert Hansen. He was an FBI, 26-year FBI counterintelligence specialist for the FBI. And he was turned by the Russian KGB and was selling secrets to them, and he was caught. Scott Walker was another guy in the United States Navy selling missile secrets to the Russians. So we had a number of high-level defections, and they created this Project Slammer to determine why these people were turning on their own country and what type of psychological weaknesses would make people do that. And then they created psychological battery tests to try to weed out some of that behavior in future people that were accepting recruitment.
Cody,
Yeah.
If you look at organizations like the CIA and the FBI, NSA, if you take sort of like on a percentage, how big a percentage do you think is working the way they're supposed to do to protect the population and so on, and how big a percentage of these organizations do you think have gone rogue and are into all of these dark things?
Boy, I don't know how to answer that question, except what I saw, you know, with places we were working. Sometimes there was a black op going on and we were called in and we were black op on top of black op. You know, when a black op went sideways, we were called in maybe to clean it up or straighten out the blowback. But So a lot of the guys that were assets, and some of the case officers and some of the agents, CIA agents, they all had side operations running in whatever country they were in. And that's kind of a standard thing. They make a little money on the side. And so, you know, their overall allegiance is to our country, but they also do things that may not align up with that allegiance. You know, the line between patriotism and treason is real thin. And I really can't answer that question. There's a lot of good people in the NSA, the CIA, you know, the military, and they're trying to do their job and trying to protect their country. But there's also dark elements or bad elements in each group. You know, if you know when the next bombing or terrorist bombing is happening and you are doing intelligence work to stop it, a lot of people say you're a hero. But some of the people actually do the bombings. They're not trying to stop them. They're trying to create them. And so there's a light and a dark element in any of these groups. And the actual percentages, I don't think any way to know.
But don't you think that the so-called good guys would be very concerned about what's going on at the moment? And is there anything you would like to say to these people, maybe to encourage them to do specific things? Or
well, if the people on the lower bottom of the of say the NSA or the CIA or Defense Intelligence Agency, if they're all trying to do their jobs and be good, they're the white hats, and then the people at the very top are the dark ones, then a lot of them don't want to rock the boat, even though they may see something going on, like Edward Snowden, you know, the Booz Hamilton contractor for the NSA, the National Security Agency. You know, he went public and tried to expose it, but he had to go to Russia and hide, because if he comes here in America, he's going to get prosecuted, and the courts are not fair at all here. You know, the courts are a big lie here. It's all set up by the government. They have a 98.5% conviction rate in the federal courts. It's all rigged and it's horrible. But, you know, some of the white hats may see some things going on, or they may not know it, because you got to remember, there can be good and bad people in a group, in an organization like MI6. There can be 90% good ones and then 10% bad ones. But the 90% good ones are compartmentalized out of the loop and out of the information that these dark events are going on. And so the compartmentalization of information, even though people may know something or they may feel something bad is going on, they're powerless to stop it because they're not in the loop. And if they do get in the loop and do get access to it, then they're murdered, or their family's threatened, or their children are kidnapped, or whatever.
yeah, there was I think his name was Stanfield Turner, the CIA director under Jimmy Carter, who started to clean out quite a lot. Do you think was that a real operation with the intention of cleaning out these things? And is that a possible way in the future of how it should be done?
Well, sometimes they could be cleaning out stuff legitimately, and other times they could be doing a mole hunt. Mm-hmm. And they could be, it looks to everyone on the outside that, you know, they're really trying to root out corruption and get to the bottom of things. And the whole time they're just hunting for moles. Because you have to remember, any organization like CIA or KGB or MI6, Israeli Mossad, they have double agents inside of them. And especially during wartime. And so they do mole hunts a lot, and they conduct operations that are totally false. But they're just designed, the whole operation is designed to draw out the moles and see who and where their information's going. If you're a mole or a double agent inside a group, an intelligence agency, oftentimes the higher ups, like Stanfield Turner, the director, he may know the guy's a mole. and they leave them in place so they can watch who they communicate with. And that is called counterintelligence. So it's very difficult to answer your question. It depends on if it's straight intelligence operations or it's counterintelligence operations. The answers are totally different.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't an easy one.
Yeah. When you said intelligence, I remember the chief of counterintelligence in your country, Kofi Black. He then went to he worked for intelligence solution for Eric Prince, the same Eric Prince as Blackwater. Eric Prince.
Yes.
And Fritz Springmeier has done the investigation that the Blackwater is run by the head of Illuminati, actually. So one gets the idea how centralized is this intelligence agency, and so that it's not like that they are protecting the Swedish people, the Czech are defending the Czech people. It's the opposite. They are one organization.
Right. Yeah. Eric Prince sold Blackwater, and then he went to Dubai and started another group called Z Services.
Yes.
Some of my associates worked for Blackwater when Eric Prince owned it, and he had his place set up here in the United States. But Monsanto Company bought out the remnants of Blackwater. And the question is, why would an agricultural company, want to buy services like that? But a lot of those guys were contractors. They were ex-military cutouts, like Tim McVeigh. And then they did covert operations that they hired out for Illuminati or CIA or other entities using the front of Blackwater. You got to remember, Blackwater was more or less a front for contracting stuff. They contracted with the State Department here in the United States for instance, security around the Green Zone in Baghdad, Iraq, and so forth. They also brought them back from Iraq to work the civil disturbance during the emergency of the Katrina hurricane down in New Orleans here in the United States, a massive hurricane. They brought a lot of those Blackwater contractors as auxiliary security, to stop looting and so forth. But yeah, Kofor Black, all those guys, it's hard to know who they're really working for because they all have covert hidden agendas.
Yeah.
Cody, you as a black op coming from that world, the word and understanding as well of the Illuminati, is that even mentioned or known about in the circles that you used to be in?
Okay, I'm having comms trouble. Your signal was breaking up. Can you repeat that question, please?
In the world that you used to belong to, with the black op community and so on, the word Illuminati and the understanding of what it is, was that something that was around? Did people talk about it or know about it, or what was your understanding?
Well, a lot of people knew about it, but almost nobody talked about it.
So was it an accepted fact that the Illuminati exists, or was it just people?
Oh yeah, most people that were in Black Ops or ex-military guys, they all had heard about that and known about it. But that's information that you don't need to know about to get your job done. And if you're going to get a payment of, say, diamonds or South African Cougarans or crates of AK-47s, you don't want to know where they came from. You don't want to know anything about the principals, and the principals don't want anything about them known to you. You get paid, And that's why you're there. You complete an operation, you complete a mission, and you get paid. The one thing you really have to watch in Black Ops is being double-crossed by your own operatives or the principals that hire out the Black Ops. So you always have to watch your back in that area.
So give an example, please, of what you just said about how you could be double-crossed.
Well, if you have a team, let's say there's 4 guys, and you're given a job somewhere, and you're guarding a house, with 1,000 kilos of cocaine in it, in Mexico or somewhere, one of the guys that's with you on your team may have been approached covertly from a rival drug cartel. And they either want to steal the drugs or destroy them so that other customers will go to them. It's a competition thing. That's just an example. And you don't know if someone behind you or with you has been hired out to assassinate you and then lay it off as a casualty in the middle of an operation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just one example. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but arms dealers and drugs dealers and all, there's always competition, and there's always rival factions or rival cartels that are in the same business, and they may want to stop you, with what you're doing.
Okay.
We can hope that there are some good CIA officers that can turn this around. I have seen Kevin Schiff, who is a former CIA officer. I guess you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He sent me several emails. We email back and forth. He's a very good person.
Yeah.
And he's trying to expose some of the truth, but God bless his soul, he is limited. He signed national security oaths, so he can talk about some things, and other things, he wishes he could talk, but he just can't.
Yeah. Well, sorry.
No, they'll throw him in prison. So, it's very difficult here in the United States. This is a very big police state. We have more prisoners incarcerated here per 100,000 population than any country in the whole world.
Yes.
Okay. There's millions and millions of prisoners here, and there's prisons everywhere. The United States, in my opinion, is one of the biggest police states in the whole world, and you have to be very careful what you do here, because they have a huge shadow government, and they watch and they wait, and they can plant you with evidence, or they can murder you, or they have a lot of ways to shut people up.
Yeah.
They're very, very powerful here.
Yes, I know. And it's private prisons many times, so they earn money. It's business also, isn't it?
Yes. And so there are a lot of people. I've had people from the CIA's Inspector General's office right here in my house, and they're really good friends of mine. And some of these people that work for the CIA are absolutely of the light. They are really good people, just trying to do their jobs. But there are a lot of dark elements in there too. You can't just blanket say, the CIA did bad things in Iraq, because, they did do some bad things in Iraq. They tortured people at Abu Ghraib prison, but they also did some things to help people and to save lives too. So you can't make a blanket judgment and say it's all totally evil, because just like in anything, like the banking business or the international drug trade, there are people, who try to do good, and then there's a lot of real evil people who do bad. The light and the dark permeates everything.
This was exactly why I asked you the question before about the percentage, if you had any feeling of the good guy, bad guy, good operations, vanilla ones, and black ops, the percentage?
I'd say the majority of them are good, and the minority of them are black or bad. But the bad ones and the dark ones tend to gravitate to the top. And they form a top-down pyramid control. And so the ones on the bottom that are the good ones are not aware and do not know what the dark ones are doing it up on top. And it's whistleblowers like Kevin Shipp and John Kiriakou, the CIA case officer that did in January 2013. Here in the United States, he was sentenced to 30 months in federal prison for violating the RDI, that's the CIA's rendition, detention, and interrogation program, for naming names about people and things that were going on at Guantanamo Bay. There was in Cuba, there's a lot of torture and a lot of things that the CIA does in black sites. And there's other people in the CIA and in the military who liaison with the CIA who do not agree with the torture and rendition programs, but they fall in line because they're controlled from the top down. And so there's our good people. Some of them see what they see and then shut up because they're worried about their families or they're worried about their pensions. Other people, you know, like Edward Snowden, he saw what he saw and he decided to step forward, but he had to run and leave his country and go over to a foreign country. He never knows if he's going to be turned from behind, and the Russians or the Russian FSB will sell him back out and trade him for a Russian spy that was captured by the CIA over here in our country. And so he's in a very delicate position. It's real hard to step forward and tell the truth. The higher the level you go, the more dangerous it is.
Another question, this Guantanamo Bay on Cuba, how come that the US had a prison on Cuba? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, one thing is that it's not on US soil here, you know, and they can keep reporters and, you know, intelligence controlled about what's really going on there. They have a naval base there in Cuba. And that naval base is actually used not only for renditions of prisoners, you know, from, say, Kabul, Afghanistan, or, you know, Kamasi, Iraq, or wherever they're bringing them. They're also move a lot of drugs and arms through there covertly.
I know people from Sweden that has been picked up by the CIA as well and illegally flown out of Sweden in these private jets and so on. It seems like most of the flights go to Schiphol in outside Amsterdam, and then from there onwards.
Yeah, the CIA has a whole range of front company civilian aircraft in countries all around the world. They have black sites, covert sites where they can rendition and detain and interrogate various prisoners. But they have a big black site under prison in Damascus, Syria. They have them here in the U.S. that the normal prison people don't know about, but they have the World Wide Web, and that's what they do. And sometimes the information that they glean from these people does help stop intelligence leaks or discover moles or provide information on how, for instance, ISIS is moving arms, or Shining Path down in Argentina is moving weapons back to the Middle East, or cocaine or something. So they keep track of a lot of things, but at their heart, the CIA has done so many evil, horrible things that, you know, it's a scourge. I mean, we have a need for intelligence, but we don't have a need for intelligence agencies that are running wild with no oversight and engage in completely illegal criminal activities. There has to be a line drawn, you know, somewhere, and it's a difficult thing.
Cody, here in Europe, we hear quite a lot about MI6, MI5, the British, but people don't talk so much about the Secret Service of Belgium, the Netherlands. Still, the Israelis are in the Netherlands too. Have you heard that it's important, the region Belgium, Netherlands, in regard to the top Illuminati, the top criminality?
Well, yeah, the Illuminati center there in Europe. And, you know, we didn't knowingly engage with any Illuminati people or Illuminati agents. You know, I just did my black ops that I was doing. I took different jobs and got paid for them. And if whatever people were, you know, we did not pry into their business.
Yeah.
That's a good way to get killed.
Yeah.
Someone offers you a job to blow up a building. You don't want to start asking them a bunch of questions. Why do you want it done? Where do your kids live? How much money? Where are you getting the money to pay for this? If you start asking all that kind of stuff, number one, all your jobs in the black ops community will disappear and the word will get out and no one will trust you. You have to work by compartmentalization. You have to work on a need-to-know basis. It's absolutely critical to work on a need-to-know. You need the bare amount of information to get your job done. And you don't want to know anything else. Okay? Now, when you're out here in the civilian world on the truth movement and you're trying to answer all these questions, yeah, people ask a lot of questions and they want to know all these answers. But when you're in the black op world, you can't act that way or you'll be killed.
Yeah, I understand. It's true.
Yeah.
What do you know about, even if you haven't worked with it, about that? I have a feeling that all these very well-known pop group has lost one member, that they are sacrificed, and many pop stars have been sacrificed ritually. That there are gangs that they do these assassination. Even if you haven't worked with it, do you know anything about this business?
Okay, I could not understand what you were saying. Could you repeat the question, please?
That on YouTube, and so we have a feeling that the pop stars like Prince, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, they have been assassinated ritually. So, and many also members of pop groups have been assassinated. Even if you didn't work with it, do you have any information that it's so that there are like death squads or assassinations?
Yeah, I understand now. Well, to answer your question, there are death squads, okay, and they're all over the world. They're in every country in the world, okay. Some of them are government death squads, and some of them are mafia, hitmen and death squads like that. But some of these pop stars, I don't have any operational knowledge about any of that, and a lot of rumors and real conspiracy theories and so forth surface on YouTube. And I can tell you about Michael Jackson. I have a friend, very close friend. He used to work with Michael Jackson and on his concert tours. Okay. And he knew Michael Jackson really well. And, his feeling when the Michael Jackson story broke was that, he just did too many drugs, and it was not really an assassination. It was just a mistake. And so with these popular stars like John Lennon and the Beatles, when he was shot in New York, a lot of people said the guy that shot him was a CIA mind controllee and so forth. That could have been the case. He could also have been just somebody who wanted to, be famous or something. It's very difficult. when you get around celebrities and real popular people like that, the rumors are expanded exponentially. And so you have to be very careful. The problem with figuring out what happens with these things is that the forensic evidence is usually tampered with and controlled with at the source. So us listening to it downstream on a newscast or YouTube or whatever, the information's already been corrupted and planted and doctored before any of us ever see it. And they can make it look any way they want to. So it's really hard to believe anything about this kind of stuff.
Mm.
But I can say the shooter of John Lennon was not Mark Chapman. It was his name was Jose Perdomo, and he was the highest ranking officer for 10 years in Operation 40. But there is a secondary shooter as well there. I believe his name is, maybe I shouldn't mention it here, but he's from Toronto, and he was part of one of the head cleaners that have been around for many decades, cleaning up possible leaks and so on after many of these major operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to ask something else. In Sweden, during like 10 years ago, I had no idea about Illuminati New World Order. And a colleague, a medical doctor, I am a medical doctor, so he is a medical doctor from, let's say, Belgium, Netherlands. And if I could describe him, he was like very successful, beautiful, also perfect on all like you would say, can it exist such a perfect person like this man? And he told me that his brother is a spy, and I told him, what do you mean he's a spy, with some kind of smirk, and he said, yeah, we call him a spy, our family, because he's doing something that he is not proud of. And I was thinking, okay, such a successful medical doctor, Mr. Perfect, his brother is probably not standing at the corner selling drugs for a few euros. But now when I talk to you, I can understand that probably maybe this man has done something similar that you have done. And I'm thinking, how could we prevent that at the universities, these secret, these intelligence, secret service recruit people, intelligent, highly intelligent people to this job with like explaining you can get a lot of money. How could we help to prevent it? Is it possible, or do you have an idea?
Well, it's very hard to keep young people from wanting a lot of money. Like here in America, most people, that's about all they think about is money, money, money. Mm. And so money is a big motivation. Some people during the Vietnam War here, they ran to Canada and evaded the draft, you know, but a lot of people went over there on idealistic grounds. You know, they believed in fighting the communists. And so there's ideology and there's religion and then there's money. And money usually wins out over all of them. In fact, in Project Slammer, the declassified results of that is, you know, a lot of the reasons why people turned on their own country and was for money. Aldrich Ames, for instance, the CIA station chief in Moscow, he betrayed his own country and defected to the KGB because of money. He had married a Colombian national woman, and when he got back to Langley, she was taking big trips back and forth to South America and stuff, and they lived a pretty exorbitant lifestyle. And he was getting paid money by the KGB to augment his meager CIA salary and the small retirement that he was going to get, and the money was the motivation. It's hard. It's hard to answer that question. If you ask the average person, you know, do you want $1 million? Would you go, you know, do something, move some drugs or shoot somebody or whatever for $1 million? There's a lot of people that would do that, you know, especially real poor people down in Rio de Janeiro. You know, they live in slums down there. I don't know how to answer your question. I don't know.
Yeah, it was maybe not so a smart question. I would ask you also about the something else. I believe it was William Colby, the former CIA chief, like more than 40 years ago, that he was in Congress and he talked about the assassination method with the whistle, with coagulation, some kind of medical that gives you a heart attack or lung emboli. And he said that the people who use it most are intelligence office or secret service. Do you have a feeling that it's even more people nowadays that are assassinated with this method, with this coagulation substance?
Yeah, I think you're referring to back in 1975 here in America, we had the church committee hearings. That was Senator Frank Church. And there was another guy named David Boren. He was a senator from Oklahoma. And they ran a investigation where they held up that bioinoculator gun, which was a flechette, fin stabilized flechette round that was fired out of a CO2 quiet type of pistol. And they would put various nerve toxins on it. And then they had the ice dart, which had a water soluble toxin on it. And when it entered the body, then it melted and delivered the toxin, and there was little evidence. Yeah, all this stuff was real, and they used it back then. Since then, they've moved on to some higher methods and better methods, mostly dealing with psychotronics and electronics. But, you know, they use any and every weapon, and as technology grows and changes and gets better, then they move with it. And so some of the stuff they have are, like you're saying, the electrosensitive poisons and other things like that. Microwave modulated fields from microwaves. All these kind of things are being used now.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff from the past is being declassified, and stuff from the MK Ultra programs from the CIA, some of that's being declassified, and others, parts of it are still classified. They're extremely sensitive, so we don't know.
Yeah. And how are you now dealing with all this, like spiritually, and you are native, like you have the roots in, your parents are Native Americans, or I have a feeling that you, yeah.
Yeah, my grandparents are Native American Cherokee. I'm mostly white, but part Cherokee. And later on today, we're going to a big powwow here. It's called an intertribal powwow, which has many tribes. There'll be Apaches, Shoshones, Cherokee, Lakota Sioux, probably some Cree Indians, various tribes. There's a whole bunch of different tribes, but yes, I'm part Native American.
Yeah, and how do you deal with all this? You said you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and all these memory. How are you dealing with it? How do you go, like, see the light? What helps you?
Yes. Can you excuse me just 1 second? Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay. The question was, how do I deal with PTSD?
Yeah, and like you're spiritually with the memories that comes, and how do you deal with your situation and the part?
Yeah, that's a great question. I deal with my PTSD through spiritualism, and I do Indian medicine. I do meditation, and spiritual work, high level spiritual work. Before, I used to drink alcohol, and I'd get drunk before I went to bed at night, and that's how I dealt with PTSD. Another way we deal with it is isolation. You know, I live way out in a cabin by the national forest in a remote area in the mountains, and the mountains have their own healing power. But when we would get back from overseas, it was extremely difficult to try to readapt to civilian life because it's so different. And so you can isolate and go out to a quiet place and stay there. You know, one time I was in a grocery store here in America after being overseas, and I was standing looking at coffee in the aisle, and a woman, I didn't know it, but she was in a big hurry, and she had on a long black coat, and she pushed her cart right in front of me real fast. And she was just in a hurry trying to get her stuff and go. But to me, it looked like it was an assassination. Mm-hmm. And I almost broke her neck. You know, we were trained in that situation like that to snap somebody's neck and then use them as a body shield because I didn't have a bulletproof vest on. We always wore bulletproof vests when we were operational. So I almost snapped her neck and killed her because I thought there'd be a second team. A lot of times when you're killing an operative or an agent, you have multiple assassins because you can't just kill them with one guy. You have to have a team that's sent in to kill an operative. Killing civilians is real easy. You send one guy in, he can do the job and leave, but trained guys like us, it's not so easy to kill us. And so my PTSD kicked in after that event. What was really happening there was this woman was just in a hurry and she was rude and she came up close to me and got her coffee and left. But I stopped myself, but I got a big adrenaline rush and I had to go isolate for almost an hour. It's hard to know if someone's coming to kill you or somebody's just coming up to get in line beside you when you come back to the civilian world. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, so to deal with PTSD, you know, there's a variety of methods. A lot of the veterans here, I have many friends that were U.S. Army veterans in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and they all take medications like Prozac plus other antipsychotics. I used to have bad dreams where I'd wake up, I'd see faces of dead people and hear people screaming and so forth. I used to sleep with twin MAC-10 45 caliber submachine guns with silencers on them. I slept with them, one in each hand, and I slept in a bulletproof vest. And I always went somewhere where no one knew where I was. That includes my wife, because I never knew if my wife had been turned behind my back. So this is an extremely difficult world in the Black Ops world. And the answers that apply, you know, when you're looking at it from a civilian perspective, never work. It just doesn't work. But what worked for me was doing high-level spiritualism and meditation and bringing the light and calling the light into myself. And whenever I do have a PTSD attack, because I'm diagnosed on my medical files, it says severe PTSD. And whenever I feel those feelings and I have the anger and so forth come up, I always isolate myself and I get away from people and I wait until it passes, because in the middle of a PTSD attack, the anger and tendencies of violence are so deep and so strong that sometimes you can't control yourself and you will kill somebody, you will shoot somebody. And so people like us are extremely dangerous. And I know I don't belong out with a lot of civilians. That's why I don't show my face a lot on interviews. That's why I don't do speaking engagements and get up on a stage, because I would never do that without a bunch of bodyguards around me, and they'd have to be heavily armed, and I'd have to be heavily armed, because I don't want something that we did in the past, 15, 20 years ago, coming back and creeping up on me. You always have to keep your guard up, and you can never go out. Even today, I still look under my cars and trucks when I turn the key. We used to have long mirrors where you could slide them up under to see if someone had put a bomb on your solenoid wire on your starter. I've seen people turn the keys on their cars and be killed instantly. So there's a very fine line between paranoia and awareness. And there's a very fine line between dying suddenly and staying alive. And every person must find their own way, whether it's drugs or alcohol or religion. My uncle, he was in Europe in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge in the Ardennes Forest. And they were surrounded by the Panzer divisions of the Nazis, and they ran out of supplies, and he had to escape. And he made it back to the Swiss Alps, but he was in horrible shape. He was very sick. He had to drink bad water. He was very sick, very frail, very thin, and he survived World War II. And he became very, very religious when he got back here. And that was his way of dealing with the horrors that he had seen. And so each man has there's therapies, there's counseling, there's a lot of different things. But here in the VA, the Veterans Administration of the United States, most of their therapies center around drugs like Prozac and other types of antidepressants and antipsychotics. Some of the Vietnam vets I know, they're on 3 or 4 different kinds of them, and it stops their bad dreams at night and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Do you experience some flashbacks also, that when you smell something or hear something that it comes up as a flashback?
Yeah, absolutely. We were going in at night one time in an operation, and me and my associate were shoulder to shoulder, and there was a guy about 4 feet away. It's absolute pitch black. You can't see anything. And he fired a .45 caliber pistol and hit my associate directly in the head. And he got all over me because we didn't have goggles on at the time. Usually we wear goggles. It depends, fire retardant suits. It depends on what the op is. But anyway, now, with that bright flash of light, every time I see a camera go off in a crowd and there's a flash, I get PTSD, and it takes a day or two usually for it to show up. And then I start having a bunch of funny feelings. So I don't like flashes, and I don't like real loud sounds. It triggers my PTSD. Okay. Yeah. And if you've ever been, in a real gunfight and had weapons, big caliber weapons going off around you close, almost everyone has PTSD that I've talked to.
I understand. We have been talking almost 2 hours. Is it something important that you would like to say, so that the viewers that you believe is important?
Can I say something?
Well, go ahead.
I just want to thank you, Cody, for what you have brought on the table here, because the information coming from someone from the inside with the experience you have is quite unique. I would say I don't know of anyone else, hardly. And it's incredible value for researchers like myself to learn about these things and get things confirmed and so on. And I know the risk you're taking on a daily basis, so I really want to thank you and applaud your bravery as well. I know that you're trying to redeem yourself also, so there's a sort of, it's on a selfish level as well, karmic and so on. But for the rest of us, it's of immense value.
Well, thank you guys. But, you know, this is all bigger than me or bigger than Black Ops or bigger than the CIA or any of this crap. It's, this is a spiritual battle between the forces of light and the force of darkness. And it's manifesting in the drug trade and in the arms trade and in the banking. And it's manifesting around the world through different politicians in different countries. And the message that I have is that if you strip all of this illusion and separation away, that's an ego-based ear paradigm that we're looking at the world through. And if you look at the world through a spiritual paradigm, you know, there is the light, there is goodness, there is truth. There are people who try to save people's lives, not take their lives. There are people who try to stop drugs, not sell them. Okay, so it's to these people that I address all this. You know, we are all brothers and sisters. We're all human beings, regardless of what country. And we're all spiritual beings of light underneath that. We are all spiritual beings of light. And we're here on the earth in this illusion of separation that we have, all this diversity. It's just an illusion. Because I've been dead twice, and I know what death is like. And believe me, when you get to the other side, we're all spiritual beings of light, and we're all one. We're all unified. So it's to this great illusion that we need to step over and clean up our consciousnesses and step over the ego-based greed like I was. I was very greedy for money and power when I was younger. And that it took a near-death experience for me to realize how transitory and illusory this earth life is. None of us are going to live for very long in our bodies. It's all short, and it's all basically an illusion to the higher spiritual truths about reality.
Thank you so much, Cody. It was well done, and I believe the same as Ole, that it's important. You have done a lot for us others to understand this situation. So thank you so much that you were so frank, that you spoke so frankly.
Yeah, I try to talk, but there's, like I said, there's a lot of things I just won't talk about. You know, I try to do good, but I have to stay alive.
Yeah, you have to stay alive. It's important. So I understand, and everybody else, I believe, as well. So, but thank you very much for all you have done for us.
And thank you, Aleksandra, for what you've done. I want to thank Ole for what he's done, because everyone has a little piece of the puzzle. And when we put them all together, maybe we can see clearly and see the bigger picture of truth.
Yeah. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.